Looks like we're about at time. Welcome in, everybody. So, glad everyone could make it, despite the on and off showers. So hopefully everyone grows a little taller, I guess, you know. So, my name is Dr. Taylor Goodwin. I'm a naturopathic doctor, and I'm also an incurable plant nerd. So, none of my remedies have worked to get rid of that, despite my wife's chagrin. I've been pretty interested in plants since I was about 9 years old. My mom made the mistake of giving me a little Reader's Digest, I think is who wrote it, but it was an herb book. And on the first page they had Achillea millifolia, which is yarrow. And I read and it said, oh, the Greek hero Achilles, he used this to staunch wounds, and after that I was sold forever. So, potions from plants, it was done. So, before I came over here about a year ago, I was in Arizona. Very different climate. Very nice plants there, very nice people as well. You can tell which one I pay more attention to. But coming over here, roughly feels like half of all the plants that were in my naturopathic medical curriculum and the ones that I just knew because I was a plant nerd and went out trying to identify things, about half of them just grow wild here. It was like, it still blows my mind on the things that I find that are freely available, and you can just go out and identify them, use them, and enjoy them. It's amazing. And you also, I've also noticed that if you try to grow anything, it says, no, we're growing what we want here. And it just overcomes it. So using what's already present has, two reasons that it's really great. So we're gonna go in today and talk a whole bunch about plants. I do usually get asked what the heck is insert the mispronunciation of naturopathic doctor here. So really quick, what is a naturopathic doctor? And besides being a plant nerd, how do I have any kind of association with these plants? And why am I talking about them up here? Naturopathic doctor is a doctor who went through medical school. That's a good start. But specialized in alternative medicine. That means things like lifestyle, nutrition, diet, also things like acupuncture, hydrotherapy, and then my personal favorite, and the reason we're all here tonight, herbs. So, I like to split up our herb talks, these are monthly by the way, into 3 sections. Section 1 is safety, which is the most exciting one, I'm sure. That one is because anytime we're talking about something where a small mistake can sometimes have large consequences, we really want to make sure safety is addressed. We'll also talk about some tips and tricks to get the most out of your plants during the safety thing too. So, second part, we have some local Ozark plants that grow here. And these ones are actually, this was kind of the plants everyone knows but doesn't use kind of month. Well, I guess was if there's a theme, besides my eclectic nature, that would be the theme. And so we're going to hit 3 of them that have edible and medicinal uses. Third part of the seminar is the part that we always skip because I talk too much and we don't have any time. So, but if we see it, that's when I talk about upcoming events and answer any questions. Feel free to ask, you can answer them too, but ask the questions throughout the seminar because otherwise I run my mouth a bit. So, let's go ahead and crack in. Safety. So, I like to tell a story for this. Got a few, but I was in Arizona and I was halfway through my medical program and I was all the way through being done with it. I was ready to not be in med school. And a selective popped up and it said, trip to the Rocky Mountains. Go and see herbs in the Vail Pass. Go into Golden, Colorado, which is a city, and it just was green. I was like, I don't care how much it costs. That's my next class. So I disappeared from Arizona, and I went to the Rocky Mountains in Colorado to learn underneath a skilled and experienced herbalist for a week. And we went and harvested a whole bunch of herbs in the lower lands, and it was just lots of fun. It was great. But on the last day of the trip, we started going up higher into the Rocky Mountains. And we were looking for a specific plant called Osha, also known as Ligusticum papori or bear plant. This is a plant that has significance to Native American peoples, especially I believe it was the Iroquois, who had it as a sacred plant. And it was one that, because of how noteworthy it was, both in traditional importance as well as in its medicinal uses, it became endangered and over ever harvested. So it had just come out of being endangered, more than just. It was a few years out of being endangered, so it was a little hard to find. So we were going up higher, it likes higher elevations. We were up there, and we came to the place where the plant that she knew of last year, because it was one that comes back and sells seeds and things, and it was gone. She said, all right, well, this happens sometimes, so shoo-shoo, my little flock, go and harvest some wild arnica and some wild violet, and see if you can tell the difference between a heart-shaped leaf and a triangle-shaped leaf, because that's what those two look like. So we went off, little ducklings that we were, I guess, and we harvested and argued about how angular a leaf was for a good half hour, until she had a runner come and pick us all up, and she found another OSHA plant. And on the way back, one of the students, one in our number, said, oh, she's gonna tell us something about OSHA that's really cool about how to identify it. And we really want to listen to that part. You should listen. And so we were all like, okay. And we got up there. She starts telling us about OSHA. She found a stand. She talks about how it's important to the Native Americans. She talks about why it's called bear plant. And there's actually a video out there that I didn't save at the time because I was burned out as heck. But there's a video out there of a zookeeper who takes some OSHA root and he throws it into the bear enclave. And the male bear walks up and he picks it up and he's excited and he starts going into it and then he freezes. And then he takes it over to Mama Bear and drops it in front of Mama Bear. And Mama Bear, she lathers up and she's doing great. In the little subtext of the video, there's something that says Mama Bear had been having bear arthritis, which is a lot like human arthritis, except you're a bear. And the next day, she started moving a lot better. The bears were using it as medicine, and that's something that was known, and that's why it was called bear plant, is bears would use it. And so that was really cool to hear about that. And then she told us a lot of other really cool things, and closed and said, that's OSHA. And then the student that had said something on the way over went ahead and rose their hand and said, Professor, or whatever they opened with, how do you tell it apart from poison hemlock? It's like, oh, that's kind of an important question. We were learning how to harvest these things and make medicine to give to our future patients. That's kind of an important little thing to add. And then she's like, oh, yes. And she explained, by the smell. That's pretty similar. And I remember looking over to my left, and there was, it was Leah. Leah was one of my cohort mates, but anyway, she had the most horrified look on her face I ever saw. She was a kickboxer. She didn't make that face ever. It was hilarious, except that it was also like I was feeling the same way. So the reason I tell this story is three, probably I'll come up with four by the time I'm done, but three reasons. Number one, when we are out identifying plants, there are lookalikes, and they can be dangerous. I mentioned that poison hemlock and OSHA look a lot alike. You tell them apart by the smell. There are a few other little things you can do, but that one's, for most people, the easiest. Poison hemlock, spoiler, is poisonous. So that's not a good one to get wrong. Matter of fact, there was a park ranger who was just out doing his rounds, as it were, and he needed lettuce on his sandwich, and he grabbed a random leaf. That, unfortunately, was the lettuce sandwich. So there are dangerous plants, and that's why we have this safety portion. I want you guys to be able to enjoy this more than once. You know, you can enjoy anything once.
They made him sick.
Unfortunately, he passed away. He didn't get help fast enough. Poison hemlock is one of the top 5 poisonous plants in the country. And most plants are more forgiving, but now that I've scared you straight, we'll talk about how to not have that experience, okay? But I just want to make sure, first thing, identification, we need to get that down. There are poisonous lookalikes. Question over here?
Are you going to tell us how to avoid those? Because
Yes.
I think there's one in my yard.
Poison hemlock specifically, I'd be happy to talk about how to identify that after. I even have a plant press over there. It is not a lookalike for any of the ones we're talking about today, but I'd be happy to talk about it after.
Okay, great, thanks.
So, I also have a couple videos on YouTube that go over it, just in case intermix doesn't happen. So that's reason number one. Reason number two, we talk about this story and safety, is that the teacher forgot to mention something pretty important, right? She was giving a presentation. She is someone who really knows her stuff. I would still take her advice and her guidance and her knowledge. She knows her stuff. She just had one of those moments. So when I'm up here and I'm teaching you things, I've got some props and I've got some remindery things and all that, but I liken learning from someone, especially when they're in presentation mode, instead of, let me have the slides teach you, read them to you, you know, where you get all the backup. Except then everything kind of drains out your ear because you're looking at PowerPoints. I liken someone teaching and presenting to a fisher's net. You catch a lot of fish, but there are still holes in the net, and minnows will get out. So I will do my best to not have that happen, but my second thing is, please always have at least 2 quality sources before you go out and actually use a plant. If I tell you how to identify, which I will, X, Y, and Z, it's really best if you have another thing to just back it up, because what if I had an off day? So this is what I've always practiced myself. It's what I encourage everyone else to practice. I don't plan to be the kind of teacher that needs you to do that, but neither did my herbalist friend. So, and quality sources, by the way, are going to be either botanists or, I'll give you just a couple. I don't usually do this part, but Dr. Patrick Jones, really great one. Dean Jordan, also known as Green Dean, he's another great one. There's 2 to get you started so you can know what a good source at least looks like. Third reason I tell this story. OSHA was endangered and then had come out of endangerment. Altogether, and it was several years out of endangerment. Altogether, we had 30 medical students there. We were harvesting ethically, but gangbusters to get enough medicine for all of us to make, have jars to take home and experience and all that. For OSHA, all 30 of us together harvested one OSHA plant, which was responsible because it had come back that far where that was responsible. Plants can and have gone locally extinct, even if they don't go globally extinct because of one person's choices. In fact, some in this area have that problem. American ginseng, I'll never touch it unless I grew it myself. It's one that has been over-harvested. We hope that it comes back. In some areas, echinacea, also because it's the poster child of, herbal medicine, and it's so pretty, and you can see it on the roadside, and it looks like there's so much in this one little patch. It's been over-harvested in a few places. So the third safety tip is not for you and I, it's for the plants and for them continuing. So, in the little handout thing, which if I ran out, I have some more. It looks like maybe we did. Wow. All right. Welcome, everybody. There's a ethical harvesting bit. Here's the rule of thumb. Harvest up to half of common plants. That means stuff like clover. Oh, look, we're going to talk about that. Stuff like dandelion. Stuff that's all over. If it is an uncommon plant, try to leave the roots alone. It's okay if you take some roots. But leaves, take a third of the leaves, and you can take a third of the roots, but you only do it if you need it. You can take a third of the flowers, but only if you need it. So, and then if they are rare or endangered plants, take nothing but photographs, leave nothing but footprints. Really does make a difference. It really does. So, last little caveat that's not part of the story. If you're on medication, many plants are friendly. Some of them interact. Over 70% of our prescription medications actually come from plants originally. So it kind of makes sense that there's a little bit of interaction here. So just to be on the safe side, talk to your doctor, whether it's a naturopathic doctor or not. They have databases. We all have databases where we can check safety against herbal components. Lots of them, however, you're usually good with. But you usually isn't good enough when it comes to your health. Sometimes you want to check if it's not something that you're sure of. All right, so don't harvest if it's been sprayed with pesticide. Ask me how I know, 6 months of nerve pain. Don't do it. So, any questions about safety?
How are you going to know if it's been sprayed with a pesticide?
Yeah.
So, the way that you know that is, number one, is it your property? But number two, so generally it's polite to not harvest from someone else's property without talking to them in the first place. And so you can ask while you're doing that. And then besides that, if you are completely in the wild and you can do so ethically and it's some place that you know that it's permitted, or you're doing very little amounts, then if it's near railroad tracks, it's going to be sprayed. If it's near power poles, it's going to be sprayed. If it's on the lee of a road, all that wash off counts the same as being sprayed. And if it's near water sources, unfortunately, something like, don't quote me on this statistic, because 97.2% of statistics are made up on the spot. But something like, it's definitely higher than 50%, but I want to say like 80% of waterways are contaminated in our country. And so we want to know what is in them by contacting whatever state run, usually state run. Sometimes there are nonprofits that do it too, that track all the waterways. So you can go and find out there. Tar Creek, as an example, Tar Creek is not far from here, and there was a huge settlement because of all the things that had been poured into Tar Creek that should not be there. And I would not harvest anything off of Tar Creek. So, excellent question. I know that's not a 100% answer of always knowing, but the other way is you taste it, and it's like, I've tasted this before, this is not my first time, hopefully, and that tastes bitter and tingly and whatever that particular pesticide tastes like. If you become an expert on tasting pesticides, you can also do it that way, but prefer to be an expert on knowing what the plant should taste like. That's usually the better method. Don't learn by experience, it's not fun. So, cool. Any other questions on safety?
What about fish, going fishing in that place?
Going fishing, that's kind of similar. I like to know if my water is clean.
What about the fish, they might even be sick?
Yeah, if you're pulling anything out of the water, some things, plants concentrate it a little bit more than sometimes live animals do because the plants can sequester it. Live animals, we have ways to get rid of toxins a lot of the time. Not all kinds, but a little bit more actively than plants sometimes do. Plants actually try to hoard it so it's not there anymore. They use cattails to do remediation because they're so good at binding all this stuff up. Do you want to eat that cattail though? No. So, the top looks like a hot dog though. Nah, that's not even the part you eat, don't do. All right, film him. All right. All right, so let's crack on to the plants that we have today. So before we introduce our first plant, I want to share with you a saying. There is a saying that whatever plant that you need in your life will find a way to grow near you. There is also a saying that you don't tell the guy cussing you out for blowing dandelion seeds in his yard about the first saying. Because it's not going to help. Our first plant is dandelion. So if the saying is true, apparently America needs dandelion. And that's not an incorrect statement, because this guy is not one or not two, but three. And they are all extremely useful for very common things. Hunger. No, all right. So dandelion is one that I hold up and everyone's like, I can identify that. Yes! And then I get to be that guy and I say, there are 5 lookalikes that are commonly confused with it. And then I get lots of happiness while everyone else doesn't. But thankfully, we'll restore your spirits. All 5 lookalikes are edible. Okay? So you're all right. They taste more bitter than dandelion, and I won't guarantee that they have the same herbal effects, etc., because they're a little less well known. They probably share some of them, though. But dandelion, Taraxacum officinale is the Latin name. Anyone want to take a stab at why we care about Latin names, by the way?
Doesn't change.
Doesn't change. Supposedly, there's some plants that have 6 Latin names, but it's at least more dependable than the common name. I have gone some places where, how do I put this? If someone tells you, oh yeah, snakeweed's great for XYZ, you can say, which of the 23 snakeweeds? So, Latin names give you a much better chance for both of you to be talking about the same thing. So, Taraxacum officinale is the one that we are talking about. Fun thing about officinal, here's a little herb knowledge that goes across lots of things. If you hear officinal as the second part of a name in plants, that means it used to be used officially in, I think it was the Roman medical, like, infrastructure, whatever you want to call it, economy. So it has medicinal uses, and it used to be part of that as a day-to-day, like, they had it on their stands and shops and it was used every day. So dandelion has a good reason to have officinal at the end of its name. Let's start with the roots. Then we'll go to the leaves, and then we'll go to the flowers. 3 different parts, different actions each. The roots, they have the herbal action of alterative. This is kind of a fuzzy word. It's one that's used in traditional medicine. It means blood purifier, and it's like, well, purifying from what? Well, in today's terms, it's more like detoxifier. It makes so the liver is able to take anything that's harsh or irritating and convert it into something that can be expelled, either through urine or through poop. Or it just will disable it inside. One of the things that we disable quite often in America is alcohol. So having a good alternative also helps with people who might have some liver damage from various causes that are a little more common than sometimes we think. So alternative gives the liver a boost. Dandelion root is also, however, a liver tonic. So not only does it help with the detoxifying that the liver does, it also boosts the liver up. Why do we care? Well, I have a sick liver. That's a good reason. Why else would we care? How many of you guys have heard, if mom's happy, everyone's happy? If mom's not happy, no one's happy. The liver is the mom of your body. If the liver isn't happy, no one's happy. The liver makes a whole bunch of things that it goes ahead and puts in the bloodstream and shares across the entire body. Anytime I work with someone that has some kind of chronic condition, I almost always will include some things to just gently boost the liver. Because the liver is going to be assisting whatever it is we're doing. And so liver tonic plus alterative, that's a nice backdrop. And this one's pretty reliable for being able to do what it's trying to do. There are some herbs that are more gentle, and there are some that are more firm, and then there are some that are powerful enough that they're low dose. This one's in the middle, nice and safe, nice and effective. So alterative and liver tonic. Last action is one that's pretty fun. It is a prebiotic. So we've heard a lot about probiotics in recent years, right? Those are becoming a really big thing. Gut microbiome is where we have a bunch of friendly beasties called, little germs, little bacteria that help us. And we're supposed to feed those guys, and then they give us lots of good stuff. I could nerd out about that for a good 45 minutes. You're this close to that doom. Inside dandelion root, there's something called inulin, which is a really nice prebiotic. This is something our gut bacteria, going back thousands of years, our friendly guys are used to eating this stuff because we eat things that have inulin in them, or at least we did before McDonald's set up. So it's really nice for boosting your good gut bacteria. Sometimes if you have bad gut bacteria that's involved in there, you have C. diff or SIBO or something like that, it can also feed those guys, and sometimes they do pretty well with it. And in that case, we steer clear of doing that until we take care of that problem. But excellent for liver, and that also means that it helps with the liver moving bad things out. One of those things that the liver helps process and move out is cholesterol. 1 or 2 people might have heard of that. So, we're going to move, however, from the liver, because it'll get the cholesterol, but it can't actually move it out of the body. It can't turn it into not cholesterol. It's still cholesterol, but it'll process it. Let's move to the leaves. Unfortunately, the cholesterol story doesn't go all the way with the roots, but like the plant was meant to be together, leaves have 2 actions that help take us to the next step. One of those actions is choleretic. Chola meaning gallbladder. Why? Because Latin. Retic, making of bile. Retic is to create, and then chola is bile or gallbladder, so making of bile. Bile is what carries that cholesterol out of the liver. So we've got it in the liver so it can process it, but it needs to be able to ship it out. The leaves make so that the gallbladder right below the liver can receive and then move on using the vehicle of bile. And so it's also a cholagogue, which means it moves it. Retic means it makes it, gog means it moves it. Basically, it helps with cholesterol. So if I'm getting too nerdy up here, you can just kind of do this and then I'll know. But the leaves have another action that's a little more straightforward. Nutritive. They're almost nature's mini multivitamin, which is really nice because they're so common everywhere. And the leaves are best used when they are small. They're going to get much more bitter as they get bigger. And so you'll notice here that the leaves look like triangles stacked on top of each other. There you go. That's for future you. That's on YouTube. So the leaves look like triangles stacked on top of each other. Not all the lookalikes have the triangles. So this helps you out. Some of them have, it looks like an or something like that, just like, or French, whatever you call that long French red thing. Anyway. Baguette, yeah. I'm a culture. So, those triangles stacked on top of each other, that helps rule out, I think, 2 of the 5 lookalikes there. So they're nutritive, they're cholaretic, they're cholagogue, and they're also everyone's favorite for a party, diuretic. Yay! It means that you're going to urinate more. So that's another way of getting rid of toxins, though, and so it helps. They also have a lot of fiber. And so here's my favorite story that I can't pass by. So sorry. Liver takes the cholesterol and packages it, sends it to the gallbladder. Gallbladder has a bunch of it ready to go, and then it squeezes it out when you eat, because it's like, whenever we eat, the garbage truck comes. Garbage truck is called fiber. In America, garbage truck doesn't come very much. Whenever we eat, we're expected to have fiber coming along with it, especially if we get bitter taste on our tongue. I'm so sorry, but when you take bitters in a capsule, you don't get that bitter taste. And so it's like, you have to taste it. And you still get some effect without that, but it's still, I'm a mischievous fellow, so it makes me happy to say things like that. But as the fiber goes down, it binds to all that bile that has the cholesterol in it and carries it out of the body. What happens if the garbage truck's not there? It reabsorbs. This is the main way we're supposed to get rid of cholesterol. The main way the body is supposed to get rid of cholesterol. I wonder why our cholesterol's high. So, how much fiber are we having? All right, so that one's always a, oh, that's so interesting, oh, dang it, moment. So, I'll let you recover. Okay, now we're ready. Next, herb number 3 on a single plant, the flower. This one is the one where it's a little bit less substantiated. It's good for dandelion flower honey, and some people like to make apparently a dry wine. I'm not much into that area, but I see some nodding from sage, wise people who have done so probably. But the flower actually tastes pretty nice, with a caveat. The little green things underneath it that hold the flower, the cupping bits, they're called sepals, or calyx, or bracts, depending on how much of it you're naming at once. Kind of like you can call a bike, or a spoke, or a pedal, that kind of thing. If you get any of those green things, they're bitter as heck, and they will overpower the subtle sweetness of the dandelion flower. So I say that because I once told someone, they're sweet. And I didn't tell them about the green things, and they weren't very pleased. So, and then they didn't take my advice ever again. So, very sad story. So, the flowers, they are yellow. So, good job. All right. Dr. Goodwin knows his stuff, yo. All right. So, in plants, the colors come from actual molecules. Like, they don't just come from nowhere. There's a molecule in there that's yellow. We can use colors in plants to kind of vaguely categorize or remember, if we've looked it up before, what is in there. That's one of the reasons you hear the recommendation, eat a variety of colors. It's because it's actually a variety of nutrients. And there are other reasons behind that too that I won't get into right now. My first bit of restraint tonight. Second. But the flower has lecithin. Lecithin is particularly nice because it helps the little delivery boys that go around the bloodstream who pick up and drop off cholesterol between all the cells and take it to the liver. The tool, the little hand truck that they use, is lecithin. So if we don't have lecithin, they've got to do it by hand, and that's not very fun for them, so it doesn't get done very well. Back in the 1980s, 90s, somewhere in there, might have been 70s, 80s, there were studies done on lecithin, and there were some very incredible results on cholesterol going down as much as medication from lecithin. Lecithin is available in plants. Not everybody has that result, because if you already have enough lecithin and something else in the chain is not going right, then obviously you need the rest of the chain to work. You can't build a house when you have a pile of bricks. Oh, we need more resources. Put more bricks. No, I meant we need mortar, more bricks. Still not helping. So we need to have all the different pieces to build a house. But lecithin is one of them, and it's one that can be missed. And so flour is good for helping you get those arteries so that the cholesterol moves away from them and towards the liver a little bit. Usually you need a few other things to help with that, but it's a nice addition. So, now that we know why we care, how to properly identify dandelion. It's the thing you can't kill. Ready and done. No. So, oh, my perfect press that I usually make fun of, and now it really isn't perfect. All right. All the leaves and the stem come out of the ground. One central point in the ground. The leaves don't come off the stem. Okay? I think 2 of the lookalikes have leaves coming off the stem. So, another thing that you can do for identification, the flower, which the press on here isn't very good, and now it's falling behind the leaves, so I'll just give it to your imagination. The flower in true dandelion is nice and chock full of those happy little, technically ray flowers, because each little petal is a flower, but I'm not going to be a nerdy botanist to you. So it looks like a pom-pom, a cheerleader's pom-pom, chock full of those. Some of its lookalikes, they look nappy, like they had a bad hair day, and they're about a third of the amount of poof. And it's like, oh, you look like you got them on the side, and then the top's kind of bald in there. It's not quite the same, but it's true. That's one of the lookalikes. Now,
The yellow part?
yes, the yellow part, it gets thinner in some of the lookalikes. Now there is one last lookalike, which actually is one sometimes I pursue on purpose, and that one I'll go ahead and tell you the name of because it's worth remembering while the others aren't. It's salsify. Salsify is also known as oyster root. I always forget the Latin name, so forgive me, it's one I don't go across too terribly often. But it's also got a common name, giant dandelion. It gets up to about yay tall, and the flower, when it is closed, is about that long. And then when it opens, it's like as big as, I don't know, that big. Big as that big. The flower, maybe even bigger. And then when it goes into the wishes and dreams of all children, it's like as big as my fist. And so if you ever see a dandelion that's like, that thing has a lot of fertilizer, it's probably salsify. Also edible, and the root is supposed to taste like oysters. I have never been brave enough to taste oysters. So, there you go. But it was considered a delicacy, especially when oysters were really expensive over in the European areas, and they started saying, this is oyster root, and then you can still charge the same price. But, so that's dandelion. So many uses, so common. Any questions? Okay, I'm that thorough. Great. So,
It's
well,
Trapagon. Taste Trapagon porifolius.
Trapagon porifolius. Sounds good to me. So, next, anyone want to take a stab at what this might be?
Clover.
Clover, yes. So we're going for the common ones today. As I mentioned, it's nice when you can get your hands on the things we talk about. So this is white clover in particular. There's also red clover, and quite honestly, most of it's hybrid clover of one variety or another. They like to play with each other, that's fine. There aren't poisonous lookalikes. That's nice. Clover actually has some fun stories. So white clover is not native to this country. For a long time we thought it was, because when the European colonists came over and they brought their clover seeds, and they brought their, building materials, and they brought their bees to have the honey. And they went out, and they made their settlement, and they went ahead and they planted their plots of clover, because bees love clover, like a lot. And the bees would go down, and they would enjoy it a whole bunch, and then they've gotten their settlement set up, and they're all good, and it's like, all right, we're ready to range out. And they would range out, and they're like, oh, there's already white clover here. How fortuitous, we didn't need to bring any. What they didn't realize, and then they would set up again and put their bees out again and do it again, and then what they didn't realize was bees really like clover, and clover really likes the bees. It actually attaches seeds to the bees. And then they go off into the wild, and clover's very good at inserting itself in certain types of soil. And so it just kind of took over the entire country, but not so much that it overruled what was already there, it just kind of worked its way into the cracks. And so it's not one of those invasive non-natives that causes damage as much. In fact, it's actually really good at adding nitrogen back to the soil. There are, I'm sure many people here know this, but if you want to have good crops, nitrogen is one of your important things to have in there. And if you put an acre of just clover there, you will get roughly 90 pounds of nitrogen a year per acre just by having clover on top of it, which is around $150 an acre worth of nitrogen. And so clover is a lovely cover crop for that. And you'll also find people saying honey, clover honey, because it tastes so good, and so many other things. So clover, lots of fun things there. But Trifolium repens is the Latin name. Tri means 3. Folium means leaf. So that can help you remember. It's got 3 little leaflets.
Occasionally, my daughter was really good at finding 4-leaf ones.
Ah! Well, your daughter should get some lottery tickets. So they can have, I had one lady say that she found up to 11 leaves once, and I'm like, you're the luckiest person I've ever heard of, or you identified the wrong plant. So I haven't seen that many. I'm terrible at finding the 4-leaf ones though, so there you go. I eat them too fast. So, Trifolium repens, that is white clover. Trifolium repens, excuse me, I said that twice, didn't I? Protens. Protens is red. Repens is white, trifolium. So it's got 3 leaves on those little leaflets in white clover or hybrid clover that is mostly white in its genes. You can see tiny little white V's on the leaf, little chevrons. And I'll try and make so everyone can at least have a chance to maybe see that. It'll be up here after you can't quite see it. There's little V's on those leaves. Those white V's let us know it's more white clover than red. The color of the flower also helps, but occasionally that can get a little confusing because it's not even all one color. Some of it's white, some of it's not. And so the leaves are how I kind of will divide which way it's more. It is more. So another identifier is the pom-pom flower up top that everyone associates with clover. And that actually is a head of many, many flowers. Each of those little things, if you look really closely, they are a textbook pea flower, as in like the legume family. And so if you know how to identify pea flowers, then that's something that's really fun. And if you don't, now you know where to go and learn. So if you can identify flower shapes, that'll be something that's a little bit of a tip. If you're looking to become better at identifying wild edibles, finding patterns is something really helpful. The pea flower kind of has a little bit of a tubular base, a little bit of an opening trumpet-like shape, and then it's got little frilly wings here, and then a lip here and a lip here. And so, so it tastes like somewhere between green beans and peas. And it's a little bit airier of a taste rather than as potent or bitter or something like that as you might expect from something. The part that we usually use is the flower head, although the rest of it is not dangerous. You'll get a little bit of bloating though. But the uses are actually some that I find particularly interesting. 3. Number 1, nutritive. So we talked about dandelion, which by the way, dandelion also has lutein and zeaxanthin, great for eyes. But clover is like a multi-mineral. Dandelion was the multivitamin, mini-multi. It misses a couple things, but it does pretty good. Clover is the multi-mineral of nature, a little bit there. So it's a nice one to have. The other actions are choleretic and cholagogue. We already talked about those ones. It's a nice bile movement, really helps the liver get less congested, moving all the garbage out. So, besides the flower and the leaves, I mean, there aren't really lookalikes. If you can find those leaves, wait for the flower to come up. There's my tip. It is hard to identify if you have no flower there to go by, because lots of things have, oh look, it has little cute leaves. All right, great. Lots of things do. So I could go into details, but then we'd be here for a while. So I'm gonna say wait for the flower to come up, and that's your easiest way. Anything else on that one? I feel like there was one other thing. Oh yes, safety. And see, this is this thing where it's like you can forget stuff. I wish I did that on purpose. That would have been really clever. So clover has one little safety catch. And it comes with a story, like everything. Back in the late 1800s, there were a bunch of cattle being found in fields on their sides, bled out. And they were dead. And it wasn't good. And they were like, why is this happening all of a sudden? Well, they had changed their baling practices. And they had been baling a whole bunch of things rather than the previous methods of feeding that I'm not an expert on, but they changed things. And turns out they had been baling clover, and it's all bunched up together in a humid climate. What do you think might grow on something in a humid climate that you know? Mold. Mold's never something that we really, well, rarely something that we really want. Cheese is great. But clover, of any kind of clover, sweet clover, this clover, white clover, red clover, all the other clovers, pretty much all of them, if they get a fungus on them, it's usually going to be ergot. Ergot fungus is spelled with an E, if you ever want to look it up, E-R-G-O-T. You might know it by another name, especially if you've either worked at or been to a hospital. Warfarin. The blood thinner. The reason cattle were dead in the fields is because inside of that mold is enzymes that change coumarin, very healthy, to coumadin, very blood thinning. And then they would eat a whole bunch of it because it's baled up for them. And it would be drying and molding, so not drying and molding, in other words. So if you're going to use clover, use it fresh and you've checked it. A little teeny bit isn't going to suddenly like, I have 1,000 tons of warfarin in me, but you know. But you know, just check it. And if you are going to dry it, you do it on a rack or a dehydrator. You don't do it in a bunch tucked inside of a sock and thrown in your closet. Okay? That's bad juju, to use scientific terminology.
How about oil?
Oil? I prefer to dehydrate it before I put it in oil. Technically, you can put it straight in oil, just you want to wilt it first. So 12 hours to let it get rid of about half of its weight, which is water weight. And then you can put it in the oil, and it'll be, and then just make sure that you eyeball it to see if there's, you'll see the mold if it's there. But that's the safer way to do an oil.
So are the leaves medicinal very much?
The leaves are going to also be choleretic, cholagogue, but they tend to be a little bit rough on the digestive system. And so it's kind of a like, yeah, if there's a leaf in there, I'm not worried about it. It's not dangerous, but it's uncomfortable. So they're kind of on the survival food side of things when you get to the leaf.
Can you just pick them and put them on your salad?
I do. So yes, yes I can. Oh, you meant a general you. It depends on who's watching. So, yeah, and so usually we'll try to grab about 7, and I call that good. And it's like, give my liver some good juice. Here's a red clover, by the way. Some of the details on this sheet were written by my nephew called myself. All right, it's my handwriting, don't judge. All right. So this is red clover. I think there's one detail that's wrong on there. I did this like a year and a half ago, and I was like, oh, let's just see if I can make one of these, which I have done before, by all means. But our third plant will be coming soon. So, yeah, and And the chevron thing, that's what's wrong. I wrote about the chevron thing on the red because I originally was like, they were on the same page, you know, white clover, red clover, and then I went cross-eyed while I was writing this, and that's why I'm not showing this to you because it has that error. You're not seeing this. But the plant is red clover, and then all the little details, yeah. Anyway, you didn't see that. All right, third plant. This one is one that actually I have some personal connection to through my great-grandmother. It's one that makes me really happy. Back in the 1920s, my great-grandmother, Great-Grandma Taylor, who I'm named after, and then here's for future you. The Depression was going on, clearly, 1920s, right? A little rough. People didn't have money. And even people who were trying to do services for each other, bartering became a lot more common because that's the only way to get stuff done. Well, my great-grandmother's family needed some dental work done, and they had nothing to pay with it. But it needed to be done. I don't remember exactly what kind, but it was something that just needed to happen. And so, my great-grandmother, when she was young, to answer your question, she went into the backyard at her mother's behest and started gathering up all the wild raspberries.
That's what
It's like it's a berry.
And this one's technically a blackberry, but still, they're similar, and we're talking about both of them right now. And she gathered up several mason jars, reused, washed mason jars, and took them to the dentist and said, "Can we please have this?" Think about my great-grandma makes me as well. But she said, "Can we please have this work out?" And he's like, "Absolutely." Came in, and they all just helping each other out. It was really cool. So now, every generation, there has been raspberry bushes. And so that's one that makes me think of my family. Now, there are lots of really good medicinal benefits as well to the raspberry and blackberry, both. I'm going to speak about raspberry, and yes, I have a blackberry crest here, but we're talking about red raspberry, all right? They look very similar. I'll tell you how to tell them apart. This one has an action that, how do I put it? It's specific, like it's for this category of people, but it does it really well. So raspberry leaf tea, has anyone ever drunk raspberry leaf tea?
Mm-hmm.
Anyone already know what I'm going to be saying here? It's good during pregnancy. It's really nice. It is a uterine, I'm gesturing like I have one, I don't. A uterine tonic. Tonic means, by the way, in case that's like, what does that mean? Tonic means it generally helps improve the health of whatever it is, the uterus in this case. It's a uterine tonic. When, for example, if someone has been drinking, and studies have found this, if someone's been drinking raspberry leaf tea through their pregnancy, usually starting after the first trimester is the technical by-the-book safety thing. Is there any evidence that before that it causes damage? Not that I've found, but I'm gonna tell you the by-the-book. That's how we're going up here while I'm up here. But if they've been drinking that, they've found that roughly between 24 and 40% reduced instance of a whole host of labor and delivery issues, such as postpartum bleeding, placental abruption, and fetal hypoxia, and a number of other ones as well. I think fibroids was in there as well. And also being able to have contractions. Some people's contractions are too weak, some people's are too strong, and some people are guys. But, I say some people, but you would expect, lots of people, they think, oh, it does this thing. That means, it makes them stronger, therefore they're all going to be stronger. A raspberry leaf tea does make them stronger. It also makes them able to relax. For some people, it's like, you can't do both. I've heard that. It's like, well, your body does. So it's making the uterus healthier and able to do its job, choose, if you want to think of it that way, what it's going to do and do it effectively. And so it's really nice. It's really nice. It has another action that is good for a lot of people, and that's astringent. Little asterisk, delicious astringent, which is a rarer kind of astringent. Astringent means tightening. How many people have ever had a little bit of swelling that you would rather not have somewhere? Probably lots of hands that aren't gonna raise. There we go. So, in the legs, or in the fingers, or during pregnancy, like, wherever it is for that individual, swelling, if you get some tightening of the tissues, it's kind of like wringing out a sponge. You're actually moving out a lot of the fluid that's built up there. That also means you're moving out all the cellular waste of all the cells that live there, because they put that outside. They have a little home, they take their garbage out. That's why it works this way out in the real world too. So and so it needs to be able to be moved away. And so wringing out the sponge not only makes the swelling go down, which helps with pain, because pressure is where lots of the pain can come from, it also makes the cells healthier in general. So I will use astringents in people who need to have better circulation and things like that to get things moving in and out. So, those are some really cool actions. There are other times you use astringents too, but I'm going to go ahead and tell you a little bit about how to identify raspberry, black raspberry, and blackberry, and especially to tell them apart.
Well, you mentioned fibroids. Does it help in strengthening uterus and other problems that might be like menopausal?
So I need to check and see if it has any phytoestrogens. I don't believe it does, and that's usually the direction I would go for that, phytoestrogens, which I have seen do really well for a lot of those things. This one would be more of a support herb rather than one that I would expect to take care of something like that as the primary herb. Good question. So, yes, so we're gonna go ahead and take the easy route, because that's usually the best way to start, of wait till the fruit comes out. That helps. So once the fruit is out, it looks like a raspberry. Now, you'll notice on the little raspberry, it's made up of a lot of little dots, a lot of little spheres glued together. Some people are very casual when they're looking at things, and that's completely fine, and so they don't notice that. And I've come across that before, so I'll mention it. But that's called an aggregate, meaning all put together, aggregate berry. Because technically every one of those little circles is its own berry. And so an aggregate berry is, like 60 of them all glued together into a thimble shape. If anyone still knows what a thimble is. It's the best piece of Monopoly, that's what it is. I was very upset when they got rid of it, very glad when they brought it back. So, the raspberry also has lots of, besides just waiting for the red berry, and there are other red berries, by the way, we're going to talk a little bit about that. Notice there are thorns on the stem, and this is true for all of the three that we're talking about. You can get thornless varieties, even in the wild, for blackberry sometimes. But in general, you'll find the thorn ones because we're all very lucky people. So, you'll look at the leaves. Usually they come in 3s, 5s, or sometimes 7s. It depends on how long that side shoot has gotten, typically. You'll notice the flower that is perfectly pressed and professional, that is absolutely visible. It looks like a rose flower, a wild rose. The roses from the store, they actually spray perfume on those, by the way. So it's got 5 petals, 4 to 5 petals. These ones are 5 petals. They're usually white, pinkish, and there aren't like 800 layers. This one's a simple rose flower, so it only has the 1 layer typically. It's got lots of little diddly boingers, anthers and stamens that come up in the middle. And it usually grows in canes, which means that it's going to come straight up, and then it's going to usually droop over, and it's just like everything all the way up is just, there isn't a trunk or a bottom part, it's just like all of it's the same, and it just keeps going until it can't, and then it does anyway. And it's usually year 2 is when you're going to get fruit. Very rarely you can get it in the same year, but you'll send up a cane, it lives, next year the cane flowers and has fruit. Blackberries, raspberries, that's the same. Now, to tell a red raspberry from a black raspberry, It's the color. Yeah, so the red ones are red. Congratulations, you have graduated. Now, to tell a black raspberry, seriously, to tell a black raspberry from a blackberry is a little bit harder. You can do it. Anybody know the secret? There are like 3 secrets.
Size?
Size is a pretty good one. Blackberries do, in my experience, this isn't from a book anywhere, just where I harvested. Blackberries usually are bigger. I won't say that that's a rule.
The raspberries have like the hollow.
Yeah,
Ah.
in the middle.
Oh, sorry. You want to. Yes, the raspberries, the little stemlet, technically called a torus, if you want to be a nerd with me, which, too late, you're here. So, if the stemlet or torus is inside, that's blackberry. That's why blackberries are more bitter, one of the major reasons. It's because that stem's a little bitter. Raspberries, the reason they perish faster is they don't have that little resource inside that's giving them antioxidants for the time that they're off the stem. I have wanted to try this and haven't yet. Go and clip the raspberries and then pull some other ones, and it's like, which one lasts longer? They say it's because of the torus, but is it really? And then I can post those findings to the 2 people that are riveted. So, the other way, and this one works when the fruit isn't there, the stem on a blackberry is darker, as is the underside of the leaf.
It's what,
Darker in color. A raspberry has a lighter stem, and the underside of a raspberry leaf is almost paper-like. Not like solid white, but it's like a papery texture, and it's just got this, I don't want to call it like, yeah, it's just a papery white. It's not the kind of white that you see very often. There's green coming through it.
Silver green.
Yeah, it's silver green. And so, and that's another way to tell a raspberry, whether it's black or red. So, for the tea that we were talking about, technically an herbal infusion because tea is a plant, Camellia sinensis. But you use the leaf. Everyone thinks about berry. Great anthocyanins in there, good for blood vessels, wonderful and tart. The leaf is what does the uterine tonic action. So, excellent little plant, very tasty tea is another good thing. So, these all grow locally. No, please.
Well, okay, I thought it was one of those wild roses, but now I'm wondering if it's maybe the raspberry, but, so I have to wait till the berry comes out to find out to use the leaves?
In the amount of time that I usually have to go over this one, there isn't a faster way. I usually stick to the simpler stuff unless we're gonna do a deep dive, which, yes, wait till the berry pops up, is the short answer. So, there are other ways if you want to do
Does
it.
the blackberry leaf have some of the same properties as the
Excellent
raspberry?
question.
Because there's a, you may find more blackberries in an area than raspberries.
Excellent question. Question was, do the leaves on raspberry and blackberry have similar actions? And the answer is, I haven't seen studies on it, but generally speaking, with how many other similarities they share in taste, appearance, growth habit, and the rest, I strongly suspect the answer is yes. And so, yeah. Now, blackberry leaves can be a little bit pricklier, so just watch that. And if you dry them, blend them down, then the prickles should be taken care of. Probably. Test it. So, I feel like I need to gather up a whole bunch of plants that I saved for October. Halloween. All right. So that's what we have for plants today. Few fun events coming up. That was one of them for me. This is a monthly event. Occasionally we take a month off, but it's generally a monthly event. We are moving the day. Today is a Thursday. Next month it's going to be on second Tuesdays, and that's how it's going to carry forward as second Tuesdays for the foreseeable future. So I usually take a break, or at least I'm planning to now start taking breaks through the winter months, because it's really hard to bring you fresh plants at that point. Yes, so new plants every month, typically 2 to 3. And let's see what else I got. There are some plant walks happening across the state border that I'll be leading in Oklahoma in the next month or two. And I don't have firm dates on those yet, but those are things that are happening. So keep those in the back of your head, and you can bother me next month if I forget to tell you when they are.
Can you send out emails on that?
Yes, so if you were kind enough to sign up online, you will be getting my email newsletter unless you marked the no thank you thing or found that setting, or tell me right now, I have no problem. But I send out a monthly newsletter, monthly newsletter that has all of the events, as well as, you see some plant PDFs. I share some of those through that newsletter as well. So there's some printouts, and that'll be the schedule. Also, I guess the last two announcements. One is I'm about to start opening my herbalism class again. I was running one, I'm still running it, but I'm halfway through it. It's an 8-month class, but 1 day a month. That way it's hopefully easy to fit into schedules. And I teach you the basics, the foundations of herbalism. I teach you about safety, obviously, but formulation, so that you know how to put things together, and I could tell you a whole bunch of other things that we do, but medicine making, you know, if you're interested, come and talk to me. I don't need to say more. So, and then I guess the last thing is I have an office, and I see patients up in J, and if you're interested, there's a free 15-minute consultation sign up over there, where you can just see if we're a good fit for each other, because no one knows what the heck naturopaths do. So, we treat basically where if you have a termite exterminator, they go in and they kill all the termites. The house is still broken. I fix the house, which is your body. So, thank you guys for coming out and listening and nerding with me tonight. That's what I got for you.
Thank you.